Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Paula McCann, and I am the team leader here in the Family Group Conference Service in the Northern Health and Social Care Trust. And over to you, Jim, or Julie and Kim.
Hello, folks. I am Julie Allen, and I am the team leader for the Southeastern and Belfast Trust Family Meeting Service, and my colleague Kim.
So I'm Kim Leebody. I'm the senior coordinator in the same trusts as Julie, so that's Belfast and Southeastern. And then Davina.
I'm Davina Clemens. I work for Bernardo's, and we have the contract with the Southern Trust to run the Family Group Conference Service, and I'm the team manager for that.
Okay, thanks so much. Just a wee overview, folks, on our objectives for today, just to help tune everybody in. I suppose what we would like people to have by the end of today is an overview of the model, values and principles underpinning Family Group Conference, both as a restorative and a relational practice, to kind of look and examine at the independent role of the coordinator and its importance in working collaboratively and I suppose very closely alongside our families. Have an understanding of our services, how they can improve our decision-making outcomes for our children and families that we work with. And that is from many divisions, including children looked after, child protection, family support, and our early intervention services that are offered trust-wide. And we hope then to put that alongside some of our practice examples as well. So just to try and get everybody, I suppose, thinking on the same wavelength of ourselves, just a wee pause for thoughts. So what I would ask people to do, just to try and get tuned in, is to participate in a little exercise with ourselves. You can jot this down on a pen and paper beside you. Please feel free to use the chat function. We would really encourage that and appreciate it as well. But first I would ask us all to take off our professional hats or our work hats and kind of just be yourselves. And as part of this exercise, it is a reflection on us as individuals. So think about, have you ever had a decision made about you, without you? What did that look like? When did this happen? At what age? And if people just want to take a wee moment just to think about that, have you ever had a decision made about you, without you? As a child, as a teenager, as an adult? How did you feel at the time? What was the outcome? Who around you helped? Was there anyone that hindered the process, the decisions? And how do you feel about it now? So I'm not sure, Davina, is there anything in the chat? Does anybody have any thoughts?
At the minute, we've had one response from Sonia, talking about lots of moving in childhood.
Okay, good. So I suppose what we're trying to do here is to kind of put ourselves and reflect of actually how did the people, families, children that we work with. So when we reflect on and we put our professional hats back on again, let's think about, have we ever made a decision as a professional about someone without engaging? Who was it? What age were they? Was it a child? Was it a teenager? Was it a parent? Grandparent? What was the outcome? Do we know what the outcome would have been like if the family had chose it? Was it the same? Was there similarities? Were they worlds apart? How did you feel as a professional at that time? making decisions alongside other professionals? Who helped? Who was around the table when decisions were being made and discussed? Was there anyone that hindered this decision-making process? And on reflection, how do you feel about it now? So really, I suppose the purpose of this exercise is to really help people tune in to actually, how do we make decisions? And how do we involve and include our families? And where and when is that important in our processes? And where does family group conference come into play? And what does that process look for families that have the opportunity to engage in it? So is there any other chats, Davina?
Yeah, we have had Alice saying the feeling that she felt powerless in situations. I think that was when you were talking about the childhood experiences or personal experiences. Hannah has said, I am care experienced. A decision was made to remove me from my placement when family I did not know came forward. I had to leave and it caused many problems from then on. This was when I was 15.
Okay, and that's really interesting because when we talk to adults now that have had decisions made about them as children within the care system and within our social work systems, we often find that they felt their voice wasn't heard, that they weren't engaged in the process. And I know a lot of work has been done in recent times to move practice on, and that has certainly been the case. And it's really pleasing to say the Family Group Conference has been such a big part of that as well. But I suppose it is to always think around when you're making decisions that every family and child has a right to have their voice heard and a right to be involved in decisions that are being made about them. So nothing about me without me springs to mind at this point. So if we just kind of think along those lines, and often what families say when we reflect with them is, I don't often remember what they say, but I often remember how they made me feel. So I am going to hand over now to Julie, who is going to kind of look back at a little bit of the historical context and bring into focus the family group.
We just have one other chat, if I can just share it quickly. Jennifer says, as a child and youth, decisions were daily occurrences as my parents made choices for me. Now I have a child myself and I try as much as possible to have her views when making decisions that affect us as a family. So you can see how previous experiences change how we do it now in the future and presently within our own family situations.
And that is so lovely. And I suppose that is very much part of the Family Group Conference where we see ourselves as enablers. We aren't there to change people or to change things for people. I suppose our process and the ethos is that we enable others to affect change, which in the long term is more effective and has a greater degree of working and moving a family forward to a better place. So that is really interesting and that's really, really helpful. So thank you so much for that. That's really appreciated. Will we move on then, Davina? Are you happy enough?
Yes, that's all the questions or comments.
Thank you so much, Davina. Okay, Julie.
That's great, Paula. Thank you. And it never really fails to surprise me that lots of professionals are unaware of the family group conference service or family meeting service, just in regard to our own service here in Southeastern and Belfast Trust. As a matter of fact, the last 3 social work students that we've had on placement all have said, oh, you know, they were really surprised and there was very little, that came with very little knowledge about the process. So that never fails to surprise me, but hopefully after hearing today and having this as a resource on NISC, it will help spread the word. And just looking at the four of us, between Paula and Davina, Kim and myself, I was topping up earlier on, and we have over 50 years experience between us just in this area of work. So hopefully today will give you a kind of a whistle-stop tour of just all of the key points. And I'll start off by just going through the history timeline. It is a condensed history, very much so. And I suppose we'd really like to pay tribute to all of our colleagues who've paved the way in, I suppose, the existence of the current services. But you know, there's a lot of people who have worked very hard in the last 20 odd years really to enhance and bring the services into being. So within Northern Ireland, the idea was really brought about by a group of interested and individuals who'd been inspired and heard about the idea being used in New Zealand, really drawn on the Maori culture, and I suppose that idea about groups and villages, wider kind of decision-making forums, people sitting down together. And indeed most cultures would have some form of ancient decision making where people sat down together and looked at the best possible decisions. So there was a lot of training developed in partnership, just with drawn on the experience from New Zealand, Australia and England. And at the early stage, a pilot was introduced in the Ulster Community and Hospital Trust. But alongside that, Bernardo's as an organisation introduced Family Group Conference as well. Eventually then, Family Group Conference services were commissioned regionally, and particularly driven by Una Lernahan. But each of the trust areas had different outworkings, and all of the services slightly different, but nonetheless the focus was on Family Group Conference. So the model attracted at the time priorities for action, and the number of children involved in having an FGC were measured regionally, and the information was shared, and this really helped to drive and strengthen Family Group Conference as a model within children's services. Permanent teams were really put in place around 2005, but before that there were sessional teams, and the coordinator role was developed. The regional guidance on the provision of Family Group Conferences in the Health and Social Care Trusts for Children and Young People Services was put in place from 2008, and then revised in 2011. And embedded within this slideshow is a copy of the Empowering Families. So you can click into that and go through, and it talks about the social work role, the coordinator role, and just gives the background and context. So it's a very, very useful resource. We can also send Alison a copy of that so that it can be available without going into the PowerPoint. On top of that, then, there was a lot of work by, there's the Family Group Conference Forum, which later became FGCNI, and they really drove the development alongside people like ourselves, who were, you know, very much part of that and helping to identify and establish Family Group Conference standards. So we, as a collective group of services, really supported each other around that and really drove the idea of ensuring that standards were in place. in and around that time, family group conference was used across social care, primarily children and young people, but you would have seen it used a bit within education and within juvenile justice. But for all of the trusts, pilots were introduced at some stage or another in regard to adult services, and I know the most recent pilots were introduced in the Northern Trust and the Southern Trust, and there are ongoing service developments. So next slide, please, Paula. So the number of slides here just explain what family group conference is. It's a restorative approach, and I'll say a wee bit more about that shortly. It's very much a family-led decision-making process. And I know we have other models where there's family engagement and family network, but this is family-led. It's not professionally led. And I suppose the recognition of that, it's an independent service, and we don't use formal assessment. We draw on assessing whether a family is maybe ready to engage in family decision making, but we don't have formal assessment as part of the process. It's a voluntary service, and families very much choose to participate, and that will always be the case. Even if it's court directed, families still have the choice to participate or not, and that is really important in terms of having ownership of the process. It's culturally enhancing, it's strengths-based, very much solutions focused, child-centred and rights-based. Next slide, please, Paula. In terms of values, the values of family group conference, there's a recognition that every family is unique. We know that within our own families. Every child is unique, and again, each of us know that. The voice of the child is central and must be actively sought and heard. I mean, that is really core. And again, if you're using family group conference and working with adults, again, the focus person, their voice is central and must be actively sought and heard. Children and young persons' needs are paramount, that goes without saying. And I suppose the recognition that, drawn on the children order, children and young people are best looked after within their families, and this should be promoted where this is consistent with the discharge of Trust's general duties to safeguard and promote the welfare of children. So that was very much underpinned by the children order. Collaborative working with wider family is beneficial for children and young people and produces better outcomes for them. We know all of that. And within family group conference, children are recognised, or the family is recognised as the key decision makers, and the right information can make, and with the right information can make safe decisions about the child or young person. The process is very much styled and informed by the family, drawn on their particular religion, culture, and indeed language. So we have lots of family group conferences that have drawn on interpreters, and so whether that be another language or whether that be using sign language. I mean, all of that is important, that it's in the first language of the family. I suppose a recognition about what a family can offer will be based on their individual circumstances, and this may differ from professional expectations. We as coordinators aren't going in to tell the family what they need to do. We are there, as Paula said, to enable, to assist with information being shared, and to enable families to make good decisions drawn on information. Next slide, please, Paula. In terms of the overall principles, and this is really important because our neutral and independent role is key to the work that we do. So we don't go in to take sides. We don't take sides between family members. We don't take sides between the family and the professionals. We find the middle line, and we try to find as much neutral ground as possible when we're working with family. And we work on the basis of do no harm. If we felt at any point that anything that we were doing was going to, going to make the situation worse, and we take that into consideration. And, you know, at times then we will say it's not the right time to progress with this family process, and we'll be open and honest about that. Openness and transparency is vital in terms of doing the work. And you know, I suppose that is just in regard to our role, in regard to the professionals' role, social work role, where information, there needs to be clarity about the issues that the family need to explore and look at. And I suppose we take time to ensure that that information is conveyed in a way that is understood. And I suppose we have the time to go in and to assist families to unpick, you know, what that means, so that they can think in regard to how do we want to react or respond, or what can we offer as a family. So there needs to be clarity about the issues that the family needs to, I suppose, respond to and deal with. And I suppose, what are the bottom lines from the trust? What are the things that the trust, I suppose, you know, will want the family to regard that this is the bottom line in terms of what social services will look for. I suppose the key point around family group conference is the private family time. And without this, it isn't a family group conference. So you can have lots of family meetings in different ways, but unless it has private family time, then it's not a family group conference, and that family private time needs to be protected. So sorry, Paula, next. And go ahead. So I suppose looking at the restorative continuum, so family group conferences is part of the overall restorative practice continuum. I suppose just in recognition of, you know, different levels that we can introduce restorative language and restorative processes and how we work with individuals and families. And obviously there's the universal engagement in terms of just our approach, our language, you know, our non-blaming, our curiosity, our empathy and compassion. And I suppose that that's something that, you know, as professionals, that we, you know, we all work to ensure that that is in place. As a service, we draw then, so that's very much part of our language. We're careful about language, that nothing is inflammatory, and that we're really driving to ensure that people are understanding each other, and that we will use restorative practices to get to a point where, and Kim will say a bit more about, just the preparation stage, about how much time that we give to all family members in regard to that process. But you will see then that family group conference is more a formal process. Again, like mediation, you know, it's very much a formal process, but we use lots of tools. The informal practices, we use lots of tools to get to that point. An example of that being restorative questions that we can draw on. So things like just taking time to help somebody unpick where there's maybe been an issue, you know, asking them what happened, what were your thoughts at the time, what have your thoughts been since, how has this affected you and others, what has been the hardest thing for you, and what do you think needs to happen next. So it's very much about taking the time to slow things down, work at the family's pace, give everybody the opportunity to unpick in the preparation stage for the formal process of family group conference. So next slide, please, Paula. So the model of family group conference is very much, you know, it's from the point of referral. The next stage would be preparation. And again, Kim is going to say a bit about that because that's a really key point. You know, very often people just hear about the family group conference or the family meeting. But all of these stages are key in ensuring family-led decision making. So within the family group conference itself, then there's 3 key stages. So whenever we ask people to gather together, the first thing that we do is reshare the information. So again, there's clarity, everybody's hearing the same thing at the same time in preparation for that decision-making process and that private family time where the coordinator and any professionals leave the room and allow family to have that conversation in terms of making decisions. Again, it's very well, I suppose people are prepared and it's very well thought through. And again, Kim will talk us through just exactly the kind of things that we would do to get the family to that point. Following private family time, there's a process of agreeing and recording the family plan and any family decisions, and then that is shared following the meeting. At that point, it will go to the professional will, you know, either agree the family plan on the basis that the family plan isn't putting the young person or anyone else at risk, and if, you know, if the family plan is ensuring the welfare of the child or young person, then it should be agreed at that point. Following that, then the plan is shared, and there'll be a child-friendly version of the plan shared. And then after that, we're looking at implementation and review. So at this point, we're hoping, Paula, that the little video will work for us, because I think that's a really good summary of the model. And it is, so it's from one of the local authorities, so it's from Salford, and we've no shame in sharing other resources. So let's hope, Paula, that
I
Does
hope
that
so
make
too.
sense?
Give it a few wee seconds. It might take a few wee seconds for the sound to come on, but if somebody wants to let me know if it doesn't come on.
Family Group Conference is a decision-making meeting to sort out family problems. This offers family members, including children and young people, a chance to get together to agree a solution. We believe that family and friends know more about their situation than professionals and can often make better decisions. Family Group Conference is a voluntary offer, meaning that it's up to the family to decide if they wish to take part. So how does a family group conference start? The family coordinator will meet with parents or caregivers to discuss the referral, ask what they think needs to happen, and to find out who is in the family network. The family network may be made up of friends, neighbours, or other people connected to the family. It's not unusual that this stage can sometimes feel a little uncomfortable. People are often not used to asking for help from their network. The family coordinator will offer lots of understanding, support, and encouragement. Children and young people are central to the family group conference. The family coordinator or nominated advocate will meet with them to find out what they think is important and who they would like at their meeting. Children and young people are encouraged to play an active role in their meeting. This could include designing invitations or choosing the snacks to be served on the day. The family coordinator will meet with each member of the family and friends network to explain why we are holding the family group conference and to talk about what support they may be able to offer. It's okay if family and friends don't live locally. Sometimes meetings are held virtually or over the phone. We also understand that family members don't always agree or get along. During this preparation stage, the coordinator will try to help everyone work together in the best interest of the children. The date, time and venue of the family group conference will be arranged to best suit the needs of the family. Sometimes this is during the evening or weekend. Childcare may be provided for younger children on the day of the meeting if required. On the day of the meeting, there are 3 stages to family group conference. Number 1, information giving. The workers most closely involved will explain to the family what is working well, why they are worried about the child or young person, and what resources and services are available to support the family. Family members will have the opportunity to ask questions to the workers in helping them form their plan. Number 2, private family time. At this stage in the meeting, all workers except advocates are asked to leave the room so that the family can talk in private to discuss the information given, decide what support they need, and then work out and agree a plan. The plan should include what needs to happen, who will do what, and how they can check that the plan is working. It's a good idea to get lots of ideas down on paper, as there are often many solutions to a problem. Number 3, agreeing the plan. Once the family have agreed their plan, the coordinator and workers are invited back in the room to hear it. The plan will be accepted so long as it's safe, in the best interest of the children, and addresses the original concerns. After the meeting, the family plan will be written up by the coordinator and copies will be sent to everyone involved in the plan. A review meeting may be arranged a few weeks after the meeting to see how things are going. For more information about the Family Group Conference service in Salford or to make contact, please use the details on screen.
So can I have the next slide, Paula? So hi everybody, thank you so much for taking the time to listen to us. I suppose Julie already mentioned that the preparation phase is really, really important, and I suppose it's really important to the outcome and what the plan looks like. So I'm going to just talk for a wee while about this, and I love this iceberg analogy because I think what it demonstrates is what people see about the work that we do, and then what they don't see. So the unseen sometimes is the preparation that goes on in the background. You know, the model demonstrates the bits that you see, and the presentation box is the same size as all the other boxes, which really doesn't do it justice. So, you know, the bit that you don't see is enormous. Actually, it's probably twice the size of the other part. So we could maybe go to the next slide. Oh. So the preparation, and I suppose that, yeah, Julie had mentioned this too earlier, it's about relationships and about being relational. And so what does that look like? And I suppose it's about a collaborative way of working with families. And what I would say is, in doing that, I suppose our thinking would be that people don't always choose the situation that they find themselves in, and that we are always the guest in their lives. And I think just holding on to that. So they've allowed us to come into their life voluntarily, and we need to just hold on to that. I suppose our stance is always about bringing that sense of calmness to the situation, and not being overwhelmed by it, and not judgmental, and, you know, and enabling them to help them to see a way out of the situation. So, you know, just giving them the opportunity to talk, reflect, and come up with ideas about moving forward, and sometimes about changing problem saturated language, because sometimes people get really caught up in the issue and they forget about all the good things that the family are also doing, and that includes the family. You know, the family will can get fixated on the issue and forget about all the 99% of other things that the family are doing well. I suppose the next one is about strengths, and I don't want to go over all of these, but, you know, going in with a view that family, underneath all of the issues, there are a lot of strengths, and a lot of families, as you know, that we meet will have been through various adversities. And part of the work about, you know, I suppose pulling out all of those strengths is to talk to them about how they managed previous adversities, and what they used within their own gift to get them to the place that they are now. So just helping them to recognize, you know, this is a hurdle, and you do have the ability within your own agency to make changes. One of the big things for us is about space. And in terms of when we close the door after we've met with people, we close the door and we know that the space that is happening between then and our next meeting is not just going to be a vacant space, because families will talk about the conversations that they had with us together, and all of that space to do that is so important. And they will reflect on that. And once you've started the conversation about change, then people will perhaps start to think there is a possibility with it. I suppose we can't go in and, you know, as services, and, you know, make massive difference. We're a short-term service, but what we can do is help people to see a bit of a difference. And once that difference is created, it shifts the system. And so the family then develop new understandings new understandings of the situation. Then they're able to put in place things that might make the situation different. There's a word there called co-construct, and really what that is, it's about joining a family, but not becoming part of, not about taking sides, but it's about joining in their conversations. So you're actually then joining their conversations and co-constructing different ideas about moving forward with change. At the end, then, there's ownership and agency, because part of our job is to enable families to come up with their own solutions, so we can walk away and they have made the decision themselves. So our conversations are really about enabling people to find their own ideas and solutions to the difficulties, and helping sometimes families see the meaning behind behaviours, particularly when it's young people who are acting out, or I can give you an example of a young boy who was not getting on well in school, and things were really hard for him. A referral came in about his behaviour in school. And behind that, his mum and dad had just separated, and he was living between two houses, and he wasn't talking about any of this. And we did a bit of work with him around talking. And I think the evaluation of that one was that this boy was transformed because somebody had actually said, "What's going on with your mummy and daddy?" It wasn't really about the behaviour. So could I have the next slide, Paula? So as coordinators, we all come from various backgrounds. You know, some are social workers, some are restorative practitioners, some are teachers, some are youth and community trained. But so what we use is, I suppose, our trainings and all the things we have learned in our journeys through life to, I suppose, enable families to have that talk, to have those conversations. But as you know yourself, 70% of, maybe it's more actually, or 80% of what helps in any sort of work is the relationship that the person has with the helping professional. So what we do use is systemic practice, and that's really about, you know, thinking about the family as a system. So they're not just, they don't just exist in isolation. So they exist there's a lot of layers to family. So there's children, there's aunties, there's extended family, there's community. So they're all part of a big system, and all of those systems, and within that system there's loads of relationships. Some are great, some are not so good, some are estranged. So we look at it that way. If there's conflict in the family, we do use mediation skills. We do go with a person-centered approach, and we'll say what is best for that person and what matters to them. We use restorative tools, as Julie talked about earlier, and appreciative inquiry about, you know, well, how did you manage that previously? What would you say worked well for you? You know, tell me more about how you got over that hurdle. And the solutions focused approach is about helping people tell a story about their preferred life. And another key point is, and I think it was mentioned in the video, was about advocacy and about enabling those people who are less vocal to have their voice very clearly heard in any of those decisions that are being made about them. So the next slide, Paula. So advocacy. So advocates are usually drawn from within the system, and usually it's another coordinator. We have used advocates from VOIPEC or from Bryson House, or if someone has an advocate, someone who there's very close to, like a family member, though that takes away from the family member having their role at a family meeting. But they have a very clear role within a family group conference process, because the family group conference, any discussion with a young person or a vulnerable adult within a family group conference process is only based around what the issues are for that process. It's not about, you know, the whole wishes and views on everything. It's really about, say, it was about how do we get you to school on time? So what do you think might help to get you to school on time? It supports young people's attendance and children's attendance at an FGC. It represents the person if attendance isn't possible. So for instance, if someone's in hospital or if a father's in prison, the advocate can go and talk to the dad and bring his views back to the meeting, because although he may not be able to attend or be virtually attending, his views are still very important. It can ensure that the child's wishes are kept central to the decision making. So the advocate has a role there in saying, you know, well, this is what the child asked for, you know, or have you ensured that in the plan that the child's needs and wishes have been heard. Advocates use very creative ways to involve the child and young person. I'll show you some of them in a minute. And when needed, the advocate then will explain the plan, will develop a child-friendly plan and explain that to the child or young person following the meeting. Have the next slide, Paula. So we use person-centered tools, and we use in particular a one-page profile, and there's an example of that on the page coming, but this is very important in terms of identifying what matters to people. So what's important to them and what's important for them, what they need to support them, and what others appreciate about them. So the thing about, you know, you can even use this with people who are, well, you can use it with people who are non-verbal, because, you know, with babies or children with disabilities, with older people, because what you do then is you ask the family, what do you appreciate about that person? So it brings them alive, you know, it gives them a place and brings them alive, and what's important for them, you know, particularly with a baby who maybe needs always to sleep with their wee rabbit or their blue blanket, that those things are all very clearly written out. But when we use them with young people who are verbal, we would always do them the way I'm going to show you now. So next slide, Paula. So the young person and whoever's working with them would usually have a flip chart and write up what's important to them and what they need to support them on a big page. So we always include children, preferably in person if it's appropriate, in person with an advocate, so someone there to support them. If things get a bit too much, then the advocate can take them out of the meeting. We always use art and colour and pages. We use this, the one-page profile. We allow them to take photographs of themselves so we can share them at the meeting, or they can draw a self-portrait for their family, and some of them have been wonderful in their day. And we always like to make sure that the views and wishes of children are very clearly heard at family meetings. So can I have the next slide, Paula? So the systemic tools that we use, and we don't use all of these with every family. We will gauge what we think is appropriate, and also we'll ask the family if they would like to do stuff, because sometimes like a timeline might be not something if the family has had many adversities. We might not use a genogram if there's been a lot of loss, you know, we might just use an eco map. And I suppose that they're all about, what we're looking for is who are the family connected to, who have they got supportive relationships with, who would they like to invite to their family meeting, and you know, and also sometimes when there's conflict, particularly in parental conflict, it sometimes helps the parents see that the child has more than a connection to one side of the family. That child has connections to two sides. So a genogram is very useful in that sense. In the corner there, and I know it's very hard to see, you know, this is the hopes and possibilities. It's a collaborative map and a way of working, and it's really to help families, you know, find a way to verbalize their preferred future. And we use that at times just to help families get a sense of what we're hoping to do, what they would like us to do, and how we move forward. Next slide, Paula. It's over to you, Paula. Thank you.
That's great, Kim. Thanks so much. I suppose it's now about, I'm going to go through two practice examples, I suppose, that I have been involved in myself, and try and relate some of that to it. To be honest, I could spend all day talking about each of these, so bear with me. They have been pretty succinct, but I'm happy to ask any or answer any questions at the end of this. Just trying to get it moving again. So in terms of my practice example one, the context, I was working with a wee 17-year-old girl who was in hospital due to not taking her medication for her diabetes. And there was also significant concern in the background in terms of an eating disorder. The young person was refusing to take her medication because she believed it was making her put on weight. There was quite a few multidisciplinary people around. We had medical staff, we had diabetic nurse specialists, we had CAMS involved, we had school, we had children's services. So there was a lot of people around doing lots of different things in different ways. Overall, this was this young person's 5th hospital admission in a 12-month period. So that's like every other month. That is significant. On her last admission, at the point where I was contacted, it was agreed at a multidisciplinary team meeting that discharge would not be permitted without a family group conference to identify actually who is around this young person. What does that look like? What is her support network like? How does this family work on a day-to-day basis, and how could they ensure that she would be cared for and supported in the way that she needed to be to get better and remain better? And they also wanted to make sure that the family were actually very aware of the serious concerns that were around, and that a plan needed to be identified to ensure that all of this took place. So I suppose as a practitioner, I suppose the first thing I always do is actually put myself in that young girl's shoes. So I was sitting thinking, if I was a 17-year-old in hospital, the first thing I would want to do is get out, and how frustrating that would be. And obviously, what does she know? So this was referred into ourselves from a family support and intervention team as an urgent referral. I spoke to the social worker on the Thursday, and we had a referral meeting that day, and just talked through different things. I suppose how long the family had been open. They hadn't been open for a significant period of time. I think it was about 8 to 12 months. And again, we had the referral meeting, and I suppose I went on to make initial contact with the family that Friday. So on the Friday, I made initial telephone calls to, first of all, I rang the young person. At 17, I felt that she had actually the ability to give permission for actually me to start working with her and talk about her with her extended family, and she was happy with that. I then spoke to the both parents who also give permission, and through those 3 people, we identified the wider family network. On the Monday and Tuesday, I actually met with all individuals within the family and with the young person first. So I went up to the hospital and sat with the young person. Her mummy was with her. She wanted her mummy to stay with her. And I suppose what I was asking is, tell me what's happening. This is your life. What has happened, and how have we got to where we are today? And as they started talking, I suppose it was about, tell me a wee bit of history. How have we got here? How has this been your 5th admission? Has anything worked well? What has not worked well for your family? And we always talk about the wee gems. So I can't remember exactly what we were talking about at the time, but I remember the young girl getting really frustrated, and she whispered to her mum, "Sure, why would I take mine when you don't take yours?" And I thought, wow, this is deeper than just this wee girl not taking her medication. And as it turned out, it was actually a systemic family problem from one generation to another, that the young girl had actually, this was almost an element of learned behavior from her mum and how she managed her diabetes. So I didn't discuss it then. I waited to the end of the meeting, and I kept mum behind, and I said, I heard this, is this a problem? And she just said, yes, it's a massive problem. I've never been able to control it. So not only were we focusing on the young person, but in order to help the young person, I was identifying that actually we needed to help this adult to enable her to help look after her child. So that information, with the permission of mum, actually became part of our conversations and part of the family group conference process, where this information was shared. Her extended family, the mum's sisters, were aware of it, but not everybody. So those initial conversations were so significant, whereby information was obtained and shared. Also during that time, the wishes and feelings of the young person were sought. But given her age, I was very much encouraging this young person to attend the meeting, to give her own viewpoints. At the end of the day, this was all about her. And she very much wanted to be part of that, but felt that she needed a lot of support. And we worked on that and what that would look like for her. So once all the preparation was done, one of the other things I picked up during the preparation stage was every single one of the family members talked about a teacher. And I spoke to the young person prior to the meeting and said, I have heard a lot about this teacher. Is she a significant person in your life? And she said, yes. And I said, is she someone that you would like to be part of this process? And she said, no, but I would like her to know what's going on, because she's a big support. That's who I talk to. So this was another person. So I discussed with her how we could work that. And so she said, could we contact her outside of this process and share the information with her? And that was absolutely fine. And all along, the social worker was really brilliant with this young person as well. And she was very keen to be engaged and updated in the information, because obviously, whilst the family group conference process is not an assessment, it forms part of a social work assessment. So we were finding out that actually during this preparation stage, there were significant people. There were a lot of positives. There was a lot of people that really, really cared for this young person, that really wanted to see her doing well. So we came to the family group conference. It was attended by the young person, the social worker. And after that, obviously, with the permission of the family, we shared that we had part of the plan was actually a safe care plan and then a family support plan. So there was 2 elements to that. And I suppose it was very important that the young person family gave permission for that to be shared with the medical staff, with the diabetes nurse specialist, with CAMS and with their school. And they did that. And I suppose what happened thereafter was the school actually became part of the network as such and engaged within the family plan. So they became a backup for if the young person presented at school with no medication, there was that significant adult there to help her do that. So it was very much a professional stance. The girl was very unwell, and the family initially were just saying she's not taking her medication. It turned out to be so much more than that. And I suppose it was really positive to have the young person's views and wishes heard and shared. There was an excellent plan of support identified alongside the safe care plan. The outcome was that immediately after the family group conference, the young person was discharged from hospital with a family plan in place and shared with all relevant professionals. And I suppose out of that, there was future planning, I suppose, in terms of the social worker and the other professionals involved. There was an identified need for educative work in regards to diabetes, and so that needed to be done with the family. And it was great that the diabetic nurse specialist said, I will come on board and do that. That's really important. And at that point also, we scheduled a family group conference review just to ensure, I suppose, that the plan that was put in place remained in place and that everybody was doing what they said. So yes, it was really, really powerful. And I suppose from start to finish, the referral came in on the Thursday and we had the meeting, I think it was on the Wednesday. So that was quite a quick turnaround, but very positive outcomes for the young person and their family. And if we want to go to the second practice example, this was quite a different practice example. There was long-term and social work involvement with this family for years and years. We had 2 young people. They were 6 and 8 at the time that I came on board, and they had been on the child protection register for over 2 years. Serious concerns regarding mum's drinking. There was difficult working relationships between children's services, the mum and her extended family. I know the signs of safety, they had tried to do a network meeting and they held one. It was unsuccessful in gathering family members. So they asked us to become involved to see if we could get the family network ready and to get them on board. So the preparation stage for this was absolutely massive, because as I started to engage mum and the extended family, we could see that the extended family all had so many, I suppose, grievances and their own experience within children's services as well. So this wasn't just as straightforward with this mum and her family. And that is where the difficult relationships with children's services stemmed from. It wasn't just this case, it was multiple cases. And there was a very acrimonious relationship between mum and dad as well. So during my preparation stage, I met with mum and I met with the young people who were happy to engage and give consent for us to go ahead. And with dad as well, he was very keen for this to take place. And I suppose the focus was actually they needed a safe care plan to make sure the kids were safe whilst in mum's care, just to, I suppose, highlight the focus. And I just want to speak a wee bit about my engagement with the extended family. I suppose I visited each of them in their own right, in their own time, in their own space, and it became very apparent actually that they were very angry, very hurt, and they all had already formed their own opinions, I suppose, of what has happened, what hasn't happened, who was to blame. And I suppose different members of the family were at different stages. So it was really hard actually to see exactly how we were going to move forward. But what I decided to do was to actually bring those extended family members together in one room. And that was an extremely difficult meeting with extremely difficult conversations. But in order for us to move forward and for Mum to engage meaningfully with her family, those conversations needed to be had because they have been in silent and in secret for years. So the preparation for each family member to come to that meeting was quite significant. So the preparation stage actually ended up to be, I'm sure, about 8 to 9 weeks. So all those really difficult to engage family members, really difficult conversations. I suppose the important thing here was time and space. And we're very fortunate in Family Group Conference that we have that time and space to spend with families and to sit with them in their story. And I suppose it was about preparing the family to try and create some middle ground as to actually how are we going to move forward. Let's focus on the strengths. It's a strength-based model. Let's focus on solution-based. We are here, this is what's around, but how can we move forward? And once all of that work was done, just before the Family Group Conference, the children had made significant disclosures. And I want to say at this point, the social worker that was involved at this point had done so much amazing work with these 2 young girls and had developed a really close working relationship with them. And I suppose I was coming in very aware of that positive working relationship. So the work and engagement I did with the children was quite minimal, given that the social worker had such a strong relationship and it was such a critical time in their lives when they were experiencing so much upheaval. But I still did engage and we did their wishes and feelings. But the significant disclosures actually led to a complete change of direction for the Family Group Conference focus. Mum actually admitted herself into rehabilitation, which I suppose is really, really positive for her and for the children long term. So the first meeting was held actually between Dad and maternal family. Dad and the maternal family had not sat in the same room or spoke in over 6 years. So again, I had to go back and re-prep for that. How did everybody feel? Was everybody okay? Was it going to be a safe space? Was it not going to be a safe space? Did he need 2 different rooms? So all of that preparation was done. But we did have the conversation or the Family Group Conference. Everyone came together in the room, and a care plan was actually agreed of where the children would live and what family time looked like with Dad, what family time looked like with the maternal family in the absence of Mum for 12 to 16 weeks. And I think that started, so that initial meeting was held in April. In May, we did a review Family Group Conference, and that looked at, again, extensive visits to both the maternal family and Dad. Mum remained in rehabilitation and the care plan was updated. So I suppose what we were seeing was actually a shift in the care of these 2 children from very much the maternal side of the family to Dad, I suppose, taking on the majority of the care for these young people. The second Family Group Conference review took place in August. And really positive to say that Mum was able to attend this meeting. It was the first time she sat around a formal table and had serious discussions about her family. That was really, really hard for her. She needed a significant amount of support for that. And she did bring an advocate to that with her. And at that point, we were able to, again, relook at the children's wishes and voices because things were changing very quickly in their wee lives. And it was really important that everybody knew and was aware of actually what are they thinking and what are they feeling and what would they like to see happen about them. So again, it was a very positive meeting. We did do it in 2 different rooms because mum just was unable at that point to sit in a room with dad. They hadn't spoken in a long number of years. The third and final one was in October, and then the final family group conference was held in January, and that was clearly about reviewing plans. There was various changes in social workers, and I suppose the care plan was consistently reviewed, but I suppose the long-term outcome was that actually the children couldn't live with mum at this time. So plans were reviewed regularly, and the family put in a longer-term plan for the care of the children at the final family group conference. And during that those few conferences, there was long discussions with mum about what family time looked like with her and the children, and that was prioritised as well. So just really an overview, I suppose, of the challenges and outcomes in terms of that family group conference. We certainly did have a very difficult to engage family, and that was for a number of reasons. This family had been open to social services for such a long number of years. They all in their own right had involvement with children's services also. And I feel that they had a barrier put up, but as we unpicked those and as time went on, it became more manageable. There was a very large network of family members, and I think that's what made it really difficult at the start for a Signs of Safety network, that there were so many people involved and they all had their own stories and their own voices that needed to be heard. So that was a big piece of the work and a challenge from the outset. The maternal family needed significant emotional support and encouragement. So I would say for 10 weeks, my phone went non-stop. It was just phone call after phone call after phone call, just trying to discuss things and understand what had happened and what the future looked like. Again, that difficult relationship between family and children's services, the very acrimonious relationship between mum and dad, and there was multiple changes in social worker team leaders around that time as well. However, the outcomes were extremely positive. The children remained safe. A really positive and long-term safety network was identified. Supervision of contact moved from 3 times weekly with social work staff to family members only. Better working relationships between family and social services. Better relationships between maternal family in themselves. They were more open and honest and felt that they could actually talk out loud about this problem now. And the family group conference coordinator remained the same throughout, which was really important for consistency given the changes in other professionals. So that is an overview of that family group conference. And I suppose I just want to say a massive thank you to our social workers and our social care staff, colleagues, for referring to our service and really ultimately believing in families and giving them the opportunity to have their voice heard and have their family plan in their files alongside their social work plans as well. And it is a very, very privileged position that we as coordinators see ourselves in. We are very grateful for families letting us into their lives and sharing their stories and their problems at very difficult times in their lives, and we will always be grateful for that. And just to say that we definitely look forward to continuing working with our social work and social care staff in the future. So I think we are back over. Well, this is just actually an example of professional feedback from a family support and intervention team social worker. I'm not going to read it through, but if you just want to have a wee read at it there yourselves, I suppose it's encouraging to see that actually this social worker in particular looks at the family file when it comes across to see if there has been a conference, and if she feels it is applicable to refer it on, and that she has had good experience with the family group conference service here. And I suppose one of the things is, and we find this a lot, is that we actually get referrals to help children's services close cases safely and establish those safety plans, because a lot of the time, I suppose that is what is needed, because the most underused resource we have is our families. and our networks around us. And it's good to see that they are being maximised as well. So it's good that she is identifying that families need and feel respected and listened to, and that their views do matter within their service, which is lovely. And that's over to you now, Julie, is it?
It is indeed, Paula. And can I just say, Paula, thank you for those two examples. I really feel that they both, in different ways, helped to draw on and fill in the detail. So obviously it's important really to include what families have to say about their experience, and these are just a few of the views and feedback. So things like one mum had said, now that my parents know about my mental health, they are more supportive of me and my children. And again, it's that very much part of that information sharing process, and the fact that we do have the luxury of time. We can enable that kind of understanding, unpicking, and the discussion between wider family members. And I think the second comment then, I was listened to and my views were acted on. I feel really being heard and being seen by having time and space. And again, we know that our colleagues in social work and social care are so squeezed in terms of their time, in terms of the juggling that they're needing to do with various different things when emergencies come up and they're having to act on that. So we have the space and the time to do things in a more planned way, and to be able to give that time. And as Paula said, we know it's a complete, a complete privilege really to be in that position. And I think just even holding the space, the final comment there, just saying we all had a chance to speak, and I think it was very encouraging. Just being able to structure and hold the space in a way where we don't have any other role but to do that, to prepare the family, to hold the space, both for the family and the professional as well, because it is as important to prepare our professional colleagues as it is to prepare the family. And we never let anybody feel that they're coming to something that they don't know who's going to be there or what's going to go on. So that in itself is very important. I'm conscious just in terms of giving some time. Paula, would you mind going on to the next slide? I want to have a wee bit of time for questions. And
a few minutes left, guys.
Yes, so just wanted to highlight, you don't even need to say too much about this, but there is ongoing national research, and I think it's important to know that some of the Northern Ireland services are involved in that research. So, and then just the fact that we do link in with our colleagues across the 4 UK nations and the South as well. It's important to acknowledge that. So just the next slide then, I suppose as by way of our summary before we take questions. So the key messages from the overview this lunchtime has been, we really focus on family voices and relationships, and that is at the core of the work we do. But most importantly, it is at the pace of the family. As Paula shared there, 2 very different examples. One which was very responsive, and the other, which took time. But we do see everybody individually, and that preparation again is very important. Maintaining the relationship with the referrer and the other professionals. I've already said that to us is very important in terms of the preparation. Ensuring that we maintain the independence. So sometimes, you know, we might be pulled into issues or decision making, and we have to make sure that we are the one that walks that middle line, and that we often feel that we're acting as a bridge between social services and family, and we would hope that when our involvement is finished, that there is a stronger relationship between social services and the family, and that there is a greater understanding from both positions. And because of that, we really recognise that Family Group Conference has a unique position. And again, we recognise the privilege of that. And finally, that there is a focus on hope that we maintain, because things at times can be very complex and very appear very messy. But for us, our role is about keeping that focus on hope and not losing sight of that. Next slide, please, Paula. So just we felt that this was an interesting reflection. People care about the decisions that you make, but they care even more about the process that you used along the way. And I feel that just really speaks for itself. So Davina, I know you're going to pick up on some of the questions. So I'll hand over to you.
You're on mute, Davina.
Just realised that. We have a question here from Caroline saying, I'm interested in feedback from the pilots from adult services across the trust. So Paula, maybe I'll direct that one to you, given that in the Northern Trust you have been working with adult services.
Yeah, I suppose that was done a few years back, and we had quite good outcomes. Now, there wasn't a significantly high uptake. I think in terms of the actual pilot and the number of families that were referred due to a number of issues at that time. But if Caroline wants to give me a wee email, there's my email address on the screen now, and I'm happy to go through that with her and share the report with her if that's helpful.
Thanks, Paula. Orla McGibbon has talked about restorative practice in Northern Ireland and the Justice NI Act 2002 that they use youth conferencing. Siobhan has said, I work within criminal justice. Is this service available for families who are not formally engaged with social services trusts? Julie or Kevin, do you want to answer that one?
Sorry, Davina, I was busy putting a comment in the chat box there. Can you repeat that for us?
Yeah. Siobhan has said, I work within criminal justice. Is this service available for families who are not formally engaged in the social services trusts?
I suppose
not currently.
Yeah.
There was to be a self-referral process through the Quakers project, but recently that has been stood down. There may be a way through the family support hubs in your area that you could make but they have to be up until, I think it's 12, their cutoff ages. The other person might be an independent coordinator called Jim McGrath, who you would find on the Netcare website if you look that up. So it's just netcare.org. So sorry, no, not at the minute. We would love to see, you know, more families being referred, but at the minute we only take referrals from social services and the family support hubs.
Thanks, Kim. And in the Southern Trust, it would be some from the social services teams, children's services, social work teams, and from the family support hubs. So it maybe, I'd agree with Kim, it would be through the family support hubs that we could take these referrals. Paula, you want to comment?
Yeah, I suppose just as well to add, I suppose within the Northern Health and Social Care Trust, we have a big drive in terms of early intervention, and I suppose we are looking at taking referrals from gateway teams a lot at the minute, and also I suppose extending that out to actually possibly schools and children engaged for schools. We have seen that there's been a lot of our referrals actually have come with school-based problems, and that is something that we are kind of looking to extend out to and look towards in the future as well. And we also take referrals for from the Children's Early Intervention Service as well.
Great, thanks, Paula. Tracy said this is a fantastic service and very much under recognised. Thank you, Tracy, and we continue to promote it as much as possible to give as many families as possible the opportunity to be involved in it. Orla has comment just in relation to young people in the youth justice system as well. Siobhan is asking, is also considering adults leaving custody who need to rebuild family connections. I'm guessing that's also in relation to whether they can avail of FGC, and I suppose our answer would be the same as the last discussion around maybe using the family support hubs. So that would be something, Siobhan, for you to explore. Suzanne has said, thank you all for a very informative seminar. Great to hear about this important work and the great use of systemic skills. Keep up the good work. Thank you, Suzanne. Orla, thank you for a fantastic lunchtime seminar. Enabling families to find their voices and offer hope is so necessary in supporting them to take decisions. And then Sonia has said, do you work right across Northern Ireland? Family Group Conference over the years has worked right across the whole region. More recently within the Western Trust, the services stood down during COVID. Remaining families or the remaining areas, and we're continuing to work. And Kim, you have put up a wee comment around sending out information regards adult project outcomes. Tina said, thank you for the seminar. Great to be updated and see how this approach to working alongside families is being promoted. Donna, in the southern sector of the Western Health and Social Care Family Group Conference Services facilitated by Action for Children. That's excellent. Self-referrals are accepted, but it's only families at an early intervention level, so not involved in social services. So that has been an ongoing service for a number of years, where that early intervention level is still supported with Family Group Conference. Laura said, very interesting seminar, particularly the practice examples. And then we have a number of thanks. So that's all the questions that we have. So folks, thank you very much for attending. Hope that's been really useful for you. You will see on that last slide where we have put our contact details. So please feel free to follow up and ask us any questions at all in relation to the different trust areas. And we're very happy to talk to you about those. Thank you very much.